Welcome to Stay a While, the podcast that's virtual soul food for your ears. I am your host, Tommy Vincent, and each week we break bread with bold, passionate women who have faced the impossible and are still standing to share their testimonies. Make yourself at home and stay a while. Hey everyone, it is Tommy Vincent, your host of Stay a While podcast. And today we have joining us at the table, Amy Trask. Amy is an analyst at CBS Sports. She is also NFL's first female front office executive and former CEO of the Raiders Nation. She is the co-host of the podcast, What the Football. She is also an author of You Negotiate Like a Girl. And I could go on and on and on because Amy is quite accomplished. But let me tell you something. She has not done that and has not been able to do that without being the woman who she is inside and out. So let's hear from Amy on who is Amy Trask.
Well, let me begin by thanking you for inviting me to join you on your podcast, which I love. I love the concept. I love the conversations. I am truly honored and absolutely delighted to join you. So thank you. And you said something earlier. I don't know if we had started yet or not, but you said something earlier which resonated with me, and I was smiling ear to ear. You mentioned that you don't just wake up one day, and I'm sort of paraphrasing it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Tommy, but you said, you don't just wake up one day and say, I'm a head coach, or I'm a CEO, no matter the business, no matter the industry, or I'm the president of a company, or I'm the chairman of the board of a company. You work your way into these positions. They don't just come without a lot of hard work. And I'm a very, very big advocate of the importance of hard work. Hard work really, really matters. And when I'm asked to give advice to younger people who are starting their careers, I tell them, work hard. Work as hard as you can. And when you don't think you can work any harder, find a way to work harder.
That's some sage advice right there. When you started out as a young person, just really exploring life and working to identify that thing that didn't feel like work to you, what was your original aspiration in life?
I had none. I really, or stated differently, I had a million ideas as to what I might want to do as I was growing up. Maybe I'll be a veterinarian, maybe I'll be an astronaut, maybe I'll be a teacher, maybe I'll write mystery novels. I had many, many, many ideas, none concrete. I went to college with no particular idea of what I wanted to do when I got out. I kept an open mind, and I understand that that's not for everyone. Some people have a plan from the time they're young. Some people have a plan from the time that, by the way, everybody who's watching this podcast, we may be having a cat join us in a minute because apparently he thinks he should be on camera as well. So if everything falls down and I get disconnected, blame the cat. But I didn't have a particular plan, Tommy. And I found something I loved. And you used an expression, do something that doesn't feel like work. That's something my mother told me over and over. Find something you love and do it with all your heart. And it's not going to feel like work if you really love what you're doing. And I told her years later, no, Mom, it still feels like work, but I do love it.
So what is that thing that you love?
Wow. I loved my years with the Raiders. I was with the organization for almost 30 years. When I was making the decision as to whether or not to leave the Raiders, I told my husband, I'm not going to be able to decide what I do next until I make the decision as to whether to leave, because I've been doing this almost 30 years. And he said, fine, take your time. You have been doing this for almost 3 decades. Take your time to figure out what's next. So the morning after I gave notice, I woke up, I looked at my husband and I said, I'm a blight on humanity. I have nothing to do. And we laughed, and very shortly thereafter, CBS contacted me and offered me an opportunity to join CBS Sports, and here comes the cat. CBS offered me an opportunity to join them, and I said no. I said no. Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I will never, ever, ever, ever go on camera. And they asked again, and there was a back and forth. And I said, no, I just can't go on camera. Nothing in the world scares me as much as being on camera. Well, I was sitting around with a group of people one night, and I shared with them. It was a large group, some dear friends, some less close friends, but still friends. And I shared
Mm-hmm.
all of this with them. And one of the women said to me, in a very, very quiet voice, as I was explaining that I was too scared to go on TV, that I didn't like being on camera, that nothing scared me more than being on camera. She said 3 words: let it go. And that resonated with me, Tommy. It just hit an example of we never know how we can impact someone's life. So the next morning, I called CBS Sports and I accepted the job, and I am thrilled that I did. And the reason I shared all of that with you is so that anyone who's watching may take something from what I learned, which is sometimes doing that which scares us the most can be
Mm-hmm.
very, very fun.
And a lot of work, fun and a lot of work. Back to your, point of a lot of work, because you were pivoting from being the CEO of Raiders Nation, the Raiders organization, and you had to now develop a new skill or reimagine a skill, because in order to be a leader at that level, you have to have great communication skills and be able to disseminate information so that people can receive it and understand it, how you're presenting it. But how did you make the shift from, being in the position you were at the organization to now you are analyzing and sharing information with, people from all walks of life, and having to drill down and get it into a language that they can receive it?
Great question, beautifully phrased. It resonates with me. I did it with a lot of help and a lot of input from a lot of people at CBS Sports and otherwise. I am never, ever loath to ask people to help me. If I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to say to everyone I know, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me. And they all did. And it's been an evolution. I will tell you, my first day on live TV with CBS Sports, I said to the producer, at the time it was Sean Robbins, I am so scared that when you say we're live, that I am going to vomit all over myself. I'm just going to barf all over myself. And he looked at me and he said, oh, wow, we would get so many YouTube views for that. And that just made me laugh and unwind a little bit. But the answer to your question is I have had to learn. Look, I come from the background of having gone to law school. So when I speak very specifically and very carefully in full sentences with punctuation. I've had to learn to relax a little bit and understand that when I'm on camera, I'm not making a presentation before a group of banks trying to secure a $500 million line of credit as I would do when I was with the Raiders. Now I just have to learn to be a little more relaxed. Now, and I'll tell you this, I have magnificent, magnificent teammates who help me.
Amy, people would look at, or some people look at, the need or asking for help as an indication of a weakness, especially if you're in an organization and you want people to believe you know what you're doing. As someone who has, had the opportunity to really do it well and do it at the highest level, what is something that you can share to combat that thought, that belief that asking for help is a sign of weakness and your inability to do your job?
I am so glad you asked that question, Tommy. It is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. If I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to turn to everyone around me and say, help me, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm going to encourage them to do the same. And that goes for admitting when you make a mistake as well. Something I'm fond of noting is in business, it's okay to make a mistake. It really is. Look, if you're an Air Force pilot and you're flying a fighter jet upside down at 500 miles an hour or faster and you scream, "Oh no, I screwed up." Okay, yeah, that could be a problem. If you are a surgeon in the middle of open heart surgery and you scream, "Oh no, I made a mistake," yeah, that could be a problem. But in terms of business in general, most mistakes are fixable. And at the end of the day, what they probably do in the worst case scenario is cost some money. I remember at one point in my career, I walked into Al Davis and I said, I made a big mistake. I made a mistake in judgment. I misjudged a situation. And I tried explaining it to him, and he was like paying me no attention. I was waiting for him to do something. And he's like, okay. And I left. And the next day I went back because this was really eating at me. And I said, look, I got to tell you about this mistake I made. It cost us a lot of money. I really made a miscalculation in judgment, and I made a mistake, and it cost us a lot of money. He just kept doing what he was doing. He was watching practice. We called it film back then. It's not film anymore. Maybe we called it tape. Well, the third day I went in, I said, you know what? I've tried to tell you 2 days in a row about this mistake I made, and I'm going to tell you once more, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't want to fire me, I'll fire myself. And this was before I was the CEO. And the reason I note that is he looked up at me and he said, you made a mistake. It happened. You're not going to make it again. I think he said, you made a mistake. I'm not firing you. You're not firing yourself. You're not going to make this mistake again. And then as I was walking out the door of his office, he laughed, kind of giggled, and he said, you'll make others. And he was right. I did make other mistakes. And the point is, and the reason I noted I wasn't the CEO then is, even though I admitted to him that I had made a mistake that cost us 7 figures, I did the math wrong, 7 figures, he's like, okay, you made a mistake. I know you won't make this mistake again. And then he laughed and said I'd make others. And he was right. I used to, when I would make a mistake or when I didn't know how to do something, I would gather staff together and say, I made a mistake. I need you to help me fix it. In doing that, I encouraged them that when they made a mistake, they should let me know and I would help them fix it. And the joke became that they knew when they walked in that meeting room that the bigger the ice cream sundae bar I set up, the bigger the mistake I made was. Because I always had ice cream there when I called them in to help me fix a mistake. And they knew the more ice cream, the bigger the mistake. But the fact is, in telling them, I'm going to let you know when I make a mistake. I'm going to tell you when I don't know how to solve a problem. I'm encouraging you to do the same. And the only issue whatsoever I would ever have is if you don't tell me you made a mistake and you don't give me an opportunity to help you fix it.
There's something so powerful in that, because by creating a culture where you can share mistakes and then collectively come together with a solution to rectify the situation, you're also stripping away fear. And when people are in work environments and there is this, fear that sits in the room or sits in the, the company, then fear starts driving how people move, how people are creative or not creative, how people present solutions or do not share solutions. It's like a torture factor in everything that you're doing. And by taking that away, you release in that space the ability for people to really show up and take risk and be innovative and be creative, and also not hide things that have occurred that could show up later on down the line, and versus, a small infraction on the establishment. Now you have this massive situation that may not be able to be corrected. So that's powerful from a leadership perspective.
You stated that. Look, if I could jump through this screen and hug you right now, I would do that, because nobody could state that any better than you just presented those points. The only people who never make mistakes are people who aren't trying new things. They're not trying to be creative. They're not trying to be innovative. They're not trying, as you noted, to take some risks. And that's not a good environment. So if I could jump through the screen and hug you, I would.
I take that. I take that hug. So you were named one of the top 100 greatest game changers in NFL history. I want to know from you, and this does not just apply to the NFL, just in general, any organization. How would you define a team member that would be considered a game changer?
Oh, um, first of all, a team member should always put the team, or when working for a business, the business ahead of oneself. If you are hired by any sort of organization, sports or otherwise, you are hired to do your best for that organization. Um, Nobody has an obligation to hire you. I remember my mom, one of her comments that she made as we were growing up was, the world doesn't owe you a living. And so when you are hired, be a teammate. I'm always, I was going to say taken aback. I'm no longer taken aback, but I remain as bothered. We hear people that work for sports organizations all the time talk about being a teammate, being a teammate. They'll criticize the left guard if he doesn't move over to help the left tackle. Did you see that? The left tackle was having trouble with his man and the left guard didn't even slide over to help him. Or, wow, that corner was really having trouble and the safety didn't even take a good angle to go help him. And yet I would see those people not doing the same in a front office sense. So when someone would walk into my office and say, you know what, I finished everything I need to do today. I'm going to take the rest of the day off and just go, chill and take it easy. I'd say, oh, okay, you finished what you needed to do. Did you walk down to the ticket office? Because they are slammed on the phones. Maybe you could help answer calls from season ticket holders. Or did you go to the community affairs department? They're stuffing 500 gift bags for an event tomorrow. Maybe you could help stuff gift bags. In other words, why are you going to criticize that left guard for not helping the left tackle or the safety for not helping the corner if you're not walking to another department and saying, how can I help? Look, that's something I did throughout my career. I would go to the ticket office, and this was when after Al had named me CEO, if they were having trouble getting all the phone calls, I'd go down and I'd answer phones, pick up the phone, Raider tickets, how may I help you? Be a teammate. And don't criticize the men on the field, on the court, on the diamond, or the women on the court, on the field, on the diamond for not being teammates if you're not a teammate. And sorry about this, it keeps falling out, but I can hear you.
Okay.
I think they're too big for my
reason.
ears.
Yeah, for that very reason, I keep one in. I only have one in. I keep one in my right ear.
Well, that's smart. Next time it falls out, I'll leave it out.
Yeah. Yes. So you spent almost 3 decades with the Raiders organization. And I have had the opportunity to coach many young professionals, as they're moving through their journey in life, in their careers. And they're not staying with organizations for that length of time anymore. And so we're talking about establishing a team. In order for a team to really be successful, you have to be able to really know your teammates and develop a rapport. And now the business model has to be somewhat adjusted because everybody's being called off the bench. Nobody's in for long periods of time for you to really gel and mesh and get things done in that way. What do you think, or what do you believe could be part of the solution to this new, I don't know if it's a culture or this new way of advancing in your career, because versus looking to build a team, you're looking to advance to the new title or advance to the next salary or whatever the case may be?
A couple answers to that, but first of all, I want you to know I took your advice and I took that one ear thing out that kept falling out. So we're done with that ear thing. It's dead to us. Okay, a couple answers. And I love your question because that's, of course, something that I noted throughout my career. And it does, as you noted, seem to be generational. I was in one job for almost 30 years. I've been in my current position for over a decade. And that's not the norm anymore. I guess one thing I would remind people of is the grass is not always greener on the other side. So if you're constantly looking to move for greener grass, Recognize the grass may be as green as it's going to get or greener than other places where you are. Maybe not, but take that into account and factor it in. Number two, I say to businesses who don't do all they can to hold on to the best people they have, that's not a good way to do business. Because if you are a business and you don't give people in your organization an opportunity to grow and advance within your organization, well, then the very best people are going to leave to find a way to grow and advance somewhere else. And what are you going to be stuck with? The people that can't do that. So it's almost like a sense of business Darwinism. If you want to keep the very best people you have in your business, let them know we have a path here for you to grow and advance. Maybe it's a quicker path than you might imagine. Maybe it'll take a little longer than you might imagine, but we will allow the best people to grow and advance in this business. And then maybe they'll realize, hey, the grass is pretty green here. I don't need to leave to go somewhere else for greener grass. But I think you're right. Not I think. You are right, Tommy. It is generational. And I think the answer lies on the shoulder of businesses in many regards to let the people they hire know the very best are going to have an opportunity to grow and advance here.
Mm-hmm. It's like your game planning, and you have to, what I'm hearing you say is there's some onus on the team on both sides of the ball. Like we need for
Correct.
people to come into a work environment and recognize that in order to be successful, we got to be together. We got to work together, and we need some time to do that. But then we also need the organization to lay out what is the game plan for me, so that I know that if I'm committed to your organization, you're committed to me, you're committed to my growth, and you're willing to invest in my development so that I have an opportunity to matriculate through this organization, to advance in the ways I want to advance, so we can all be successful in this process.
I agree with every word you just uttered, and I will add one other thing. Be realistic and have some patience. I remember interviewing someone, and he was coming in for a very, very, very entry-level job, which is fine. He was straight out of school. It was an entry-level job in the business affairs. And his comment to me was, how do I advance and, ultimately become the president of a team, the CEO of a team, the general manager of a team? I said, well, there's work to be done in that regard, but also this is day one. If you are hired, you need to have some element of patience. Look, we interviewed someone one day for a position as a receptionist. And yes, kids, back in the olden days, there were receptionists that actually answered landlines. And the person who came in for the interview as a receptionist said that her plan was within 3 years to be the general manager. And I thought, I love your ambition. I love that you want to work hard, but I'm not sure interviewing for this position and having that as a goal for 2 or 3 years from now, because I don't remember if she said 2 or 3, is realistic. So those are just 2 examples to say yes to everything you said, but also recognize that not everything's going to happen overnight.
So your career journey has made you privy to the behind the scenes of what it takes to create success. What are some of the components of a successful game plan?
Some of them we've discussed already. I would put at or near the top of the list hard work. Again, hard work matters. It really, really matters. You really need to work as hard as you can and then work even harder. Recognizing that you're part of a team, no matter what business, what industry, what role, you're part of a team. And your goal should be to be the best teammate you can and to help the organization for which you work as best you can. And being, look, I had a fancy title. I think the reason was that the NFL required teams to have fancy titles for some people. But I don't believe in titles. Titles aren't necessary. What matters is that you do whatever you can to help the business be the best it can be. I mean, as I said, when the ticket office phones needed to be answered, I would answer the phones. When gift bags needed to be filled, I'd fill the gift bags. When we were having kids over for Halloween, we used to do big events and have kids in from the community for Halloween. I'd be down there handing out the candy. Do whatever you can to help however you can.
Mhm.
And by the way,
What
when I
was
was
the
giving out the candy on Halloween, I was dressed as a cat. And I
oh,
had black, I had a little black circle on my nose, and I had whiskers, and I had ears, and I had a tail. And right before I was walking down to go to the event, to the function, where we had all these kids coming in, Al called me into his office. For those who don't know, Al Davis called me into his office, and I walked in. And I won't swear on your podcast, but I walked in and he asked me something about our financial statements and about our line of credit and all these financial issues. I answered all his questions. And as I'm walking out, I hear him say to his assistants, "Was she dressed as an effing cat?" So yeah, sometimes you do what you got to do, even if you're dressed as a cat. And he didn't abbreviate the word.
and you look, your cat has made its debut on this podcast. What is your cat's name?
Which cat came over here? I got to. His name is Rex.
Okay. I have an Uncle Rex.
Well, there you go. Tell your uncle we have a cat named after him. We're named for him.
Let's talk about your book and how you came about the title of your book. I'm actually in the process of writing a book and I don't have my title yet.
Yay.
And so how did you arrive at the title, You Negotiate Like a Girl?
I had help with that. So I had originally planned to name the book Without Regard. And the concept was without regard to gender. I did my job
Mm-hmm.
without regard to gender. And
Mm-hmm.
I love to write, love to write. So I thought I'd write this book, but then I realized I have no idea how to organize chapters or put something in book form. I mean, certainly I can put all my thoughts on paper, but how do I make it into a book? So I contacted Mike Freeman, who I adore. Mike is with USA Today now. He wasn't with USA Today at the time. And I sent him everything I had written. And he read the story where I said that I was told, "You negotiate like a girl." And Mike said to me, "Why don't you name the book You Negotiate Like a Girl?" And it was a brilliant idea. And Mike gets absolute, full, total credit for that.
You said in regards to showing up, doing the work, and I'm paraphrasing, and you do it irregardless of the gender. And a lot of times there's a lot of conversation around the obstacles and the challenges, and that's what's uplifted in conversation, especially where women are concerned, moving in spaces that are male dominated. And I don't believe we spend enough time talking about what it takes to be a leader in an organization, even if showing up, you may be the one of, regard, it could be, your skin color, your gender, whatever it is. When you think about your journey and your ability just to continue to show up, just doing what you believe was necessary for you to be successful, what is something that you could share with other women that will not act like the obstacles aren't there, but being able to have on the blinders long enough for you to be successful and achieve your goal?
Well, Tommy, I'll start by noting that I do recognize the tremendous, tremendous, tremendous fortune I had working for a man, Al Davis, who hired without regard to race or gender or ethnicity or any other individuality, which has no bearing on whether someone can do a job. So I had that tremendous fortune, and I recognize not everyone does. So when I answer your question, I just want to make clear that I understood that I was working for a man, I was advanced by a man whose message was clear. He didn't care about these individualities that had no bearing on whether one could do a job. In other words, it's not that he didn't care about the individualities. He simply didn't think those individualities, race, gender, ethnicity, otherwise, had any bearing on whether one can do a job. So I do recognize the good fortune. It goes back in many regards to my mom. My mom graduated college in the late 1940s with a degree in chemistry. I believe she was the only woman graduating from her college with a degree in chemistry. The rest of the chemistry majors, or the rest of the people whose degrees were in chemistry, were men. And she went into the interview process and was interviewing with pharmaceutical companies and other companies, and no one was giving her a job. So finally, her last interview, she says to the gentleman interviewing, "Why is no one offering me a job? Every single company that has visited campus has offered my lab partner a job, and frankly, he wouldn't have passed if I wasn't his lab partner. So why is he getting all these offers and I'm not?" And as she relayed the story to me, she said, he looked at me like, "Wait, you don't understand?" And he said, with this look of incredulity on his face, "You're a beautiful woman. You have a very large ring on that finger on your hand. It's clear you're either married or getting married. So you're going to go off and have kids, and no one's going to hire you because we're not going to put all this time and effort into hiring you and training you only to have you leave." And instead of getting angry, instead of getting bitter, she's like, oh, okay, I gotcha. And she went on and got a master's degree. And then she went on and got a doctorate degree. And then she went on to have this magnificent career in which she taught science to kids who weren't given a chance in a lot of instances, and taught teachers how to teach science. My point is, she didn't let that derail her. It motivated her. And I think I picked up on that. My favorite movie is Apollo 13. And there's that scene where the Ed Harris character walks into the room and dumps on the table bolts and pieces and parts. And he says to the team assembled around the table, using only these pieces and parts, because that is all they have up there on Apollo 13, find a way to get those men home alive. Do you think anyone on Apollo 13 cared what the race or the gender or the age or any individuality of the people at that table were? They just wanted to get home alive. So that's the way I've approached my career. I guess my mom really did have an impact on me in that regard. And she once said something to me. My mom did not have a quiet voice. She was just bigger than life and loud. And then she started to tell me something in such a soft voice. I immediately knew it was important. And she told me how much she appreciated Al Davis. And I'm thinking, well, I know it's not about playing man, not zone, because she wouldn't care about that. And I know it's not about rushing. I know it's not about, all the times he told me, "Kid, don't leave a team without corners." And so I looked at her and she said, "He did for you what no one did for me coming out of college. He gave you a chance." And that was very, very, very special.
That was beautiful. I can't even imagine how your success washed over that moment in her life, and it smoothed away all the edges. That's beautiful.
Well, and what you just said is beautiful, and nobody's ever expressed it that way to me before. I've never thought about it from that perspective, and you just gave me goosebumps. And I shared the story with Al. I told him what my mom said, and it was just a very, very special moment. We exchanged a look and he understood, and it was very meaningful. But nobody's ever shared with me what you just shared from the perspective you just shared. And as I said, you gave me goosebumps.
I have been in meetings where it'll be Troy and I, because we do a lot of work together outside of his day job. And oftentimes in the room, I'll be the only woman sitting in the room. And they'll have conversation all around me. And little do they know. And I did say this one time in one of our meetings, I said that I could shut this whole thing down when I walk out of here, just by what I say to Troy. We're doing it or we're not. But anyhow, so they, will talk around me. And what I have learned for myself personally is a tremendous advantage in those situations is it presents me with an opportunity to hear everything, to see everything, and allow for the conversation to develop, to hear what's looking to be accomplished in that conversation. And so I'm writing notes and I'm connecting all of the dots. And when it's all said and done, Troy will never allow for the conversation to end without giving me the floor. And so he'll bring it and he'll say, he calls me Tom, and he'll say, Tom, what do you have to say? And I
Love
don't
that.
care if you've given me 10 minutes or 2 minutes, I can, from beginning to end, summarize the whole meeting, present the strategy and the plan, and present you with a solution, because you've afforded me the opportunity to be able to hear and to see and absorb everything in that room. And so I've learned to use those situations to my advantage, and to highlight my attributes and my strengths, and why I add tremendous value to any team I'm a part of.
You took something they should not have been doing and you turned that to your advantage and their disadvantage. And I love that. When I joined the NFL, it was the early part of the 80s when I joined as an intern, and then the mid 80s when I joined. Yeah, and I know that was a long time ago. Mid 80s when I joined full time. And I went to that first NFL owners meeting, and I was the only woman in the room. And you know what? I didn't care. When
Mm-mm.
for so many, look, why should I care? When I walked into that room and I'm the only woman, I guess I'll explain it in two ways. Number one, it has never made sense to me. If I go into a meeting, a business meeting, a meeting with bankers, a coaching meeting, a meeting with team owners, league owners, and I don't want anyone focusing on my gender, why should I be focusing on my gender? That has just never
Mm-hmm.
made sense to me. If I don't want you thinking about my gender, why am I thinking about my gender? And number two, if you are thinking about my gender, well, then advantage me, because you're wasting your time and I'm not wasting my time. So if you, and by you I mean anyone with whom I'm meeting, want to be hung up on the fact that I'm a woman, fine, take your time, waste your time, put your energy and your effort there. I'm not spending one damn minute thinking about the fact that I'm the woman in the room or the only woman in the room, because it's a waste of my time to think about it. I'm there to do my job. And I love that you took a situation like that and turned it to your advantage and their disadvantage. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Always will. But I have to say, Amy, it's because I know who I am. There is this level of confidence that we acquire when we really take the time to understand who we are, and recognizing that, we have this whole life experience that has the opportunity to come to the room with us. And versus, you know, I used to think that there were these aspects of my life that were my disqualifiers. And then as I matured, I recognized those attributes are actually my qualifiers. Those are the things
Love
that
that.
make me who I am, and create tremendous value to anyone that I have an opportunity to be fortunate enough to do a project with or be in business with. And so, really understanding who you are, there's so much power in that, because people won't be able to diminish you by placing their thoughts about who you are or who they say you are on you, because you'll know immediately that's not who I am. And you present yourself in a way that represents a confidence that people won't be able to knock down.
And who cares what they think? Look, maybe it would be nice if not maybe, they shouldn't think those things. But if they do, wasting your time focusing on what they think rather than focusing on yourself and doing yourself and your job as best you can be doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, I'm going to add one caveat to everything I said. The best advice I've ever received in my life was from my mom, who told me from the time I was an itty bitty girl, to thine own self be true. And as moms
Mm-hmm.
can do, she repeated it over and over and over again throughout my life. And as kids can do, particularly teenagers, every time she did, I rolled my eyes. But the fact is, she's right. And by the way, it wasn't until I was in college that I realized, or I learned, that she was quoting Shakespeare. I thought she invented that. But Shakespeare, to thine own self be true. And the reason I share that is what worked for me may not work for everybody. What worked
Mm-hmm.
for me was not caring that I was the only woman in the room, was not thinking about the fact that I was the only woman in the room, by not being deterred if other people were bothered that I was a woman in the room. I didn't care what they thought. I didn't care if they thought I didn't belong. But I recognize that's not an approach that is comfortable for everyone.
Let's move into our next segment of this conversation. Food is love, where we have an opportunity to really get some lessons from the table. And my first question for you is, what food best describes your personality and why?
Ice cream. Ice cream, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. Now, wait a minute. I actually brought something with me. I inherited my love from ice cream from my mother, from our family. This, and you can see how big it is because it's bigger than me, is what my mother referred to as the ice cream tray. And when I was a kid, well, I mean, our whole life while my mom was around, whenever it was, does anybody want some ice cream? Sure. She didn't walk out with 1 pint or 2 pints. This 5'2", when she stretched, woman walked in with that tray. Once again, here's how big the tray is. She walked in with this tray, which held about 12 half-gallons of ice cream. And there were toppings, and there was whipped cream, and there were sprinkles, and there was everything. So my friends would come over when I was a kid, and my mom would say, anybody want some ice cream? And my friends were so psyched because ice cream at another person's house was, well, here's a pint, here's a pint. Ice cream at our house was the ice cream tray. We have carried that tradition on from generation to generation. And as I said, when I make a mistake, I gather people, I make an ice cream sundae bar. We fix the mistake together while making ice cream sundaes. Happy times, ice cream. Stressful times, ice cream. Ice cream is, that's my food. Now, I should also note, I'm a vegetarian. So, maybe skewing to ice cream also helps in that regard because, there's a lot of calcium and a lot of protein in dairy.
Now, what I love about this tradition that you've carried forward is you're taking your mom into all of these rooms with you. And she
Oh,
is
yeah.
part of the solution to the challenges, and your whole team and everybody that has this opportunity to partake in this ice cream experience, that they are experiencing your mom.
You gave
That's
me goosebumps
priceless.
again. You gave me goosebumps again. And by the way, you know how I'm not going to speak for you, but for me and many women I know, at some point we realize, oh my gosh, we've turned into our mother.
Yeah.
And one of the ways I've turned into my mother is I can't walk over there right now because I'd have to get unwired and everything. But if you looked in the freezer in our house right now, there are at least 12 or 13 flavors of ice cream. And by the way, when I grew up, we had a separate ice cream freezer. There was just
Oh,
one
wow.
freezer just for ice cream. So yeah, ice cream is my happy food.
So name a time in your life where food was healing for you.
I am an emotional eater. And
Mm-hmm.
I eat when I'm happy, I eat when I'm thrilled, I eat when I'm excited, I eat when I'm stressed. So I don't know that it's any one instance in which it's been a healer, but if you walk in and you see me just sitting and shoveling ice cream straight from that carton, and I do that a lot, into my mouth rapidly, sometimes it's because I'm stressed. Sometimes it's because I've accomplished something and I'm so giddy and so excited that I think I should celebrate with ice cream. And I always laugh at friends of mine who say, why are you celebrating with ice cream? That doesn't look very healthy. And I'll look at them as they're downing wine and saying, you know what, you drink yours. I'm eating mine. Um, so, I don't think there was one instance in which ice cream. Oh, you know what? I will tell you what. When my mom passed away, and she was quite old when she did. She was in her late 90s. After the funeral, and it was during COVID, so it was and she didn't pass away from COVID, but during COVID. So it had to be just a very limited gathering of just immediate family. And what we did afterwards is we had a big ice cream sundae bar in her honor. So, we all, instead of raising a toast to my mom, we all raised our ice cream cups and ice cream sundaes, and we had a giant ice cream sundae party in her honor.
You just keep having all of these moments that are just absolutely beautiful. Does your family have an heirloom recipe that has been passed down from generation to generation?
There may be, well, there are those recipes. One of my grandmas made an apple pie that people love to make. Another made a different kind of cake. They were not passed down to me because I don't cook. I do not cook. I mean, I'll heat things up. I'll melt cheese on a tortilla. I can make a quesadilla in the oven. You just take a tortilla and you put cheese on it and then you put it in and it gets hot. That's the limit of my cooking. Tony, I once caught the kitchen on fire. I do not cook. And I don't cook because I find it very, very, very stressful because, this has to be ready at a certain time, but what if this takes longer? And what if this takes longer? How do you coordinate it all? And at one point, my very best friend looked at me and said, let me understand this. You worked for Al Davis for 30 years and you think cooking is stressful? But the answer is yes, cooking is stressful. So there have been recipes that have been handed down, but everyone knows, don't hand them to Amy. She ain't cooking.
Noted.
Don't cook. I do know how to do those slice and bake, like where you can buy the cookie logs and you just chop up the
yes.
cookie logs and put them in. I can do that because, cookies make a good foundation for an ice cream sundae.
When you said that, I'm thinking, yeah, that makes sense because warm cookies and ice cream are perfect.
Yeah. But when she said, wait, let me get this straight. You worked for Al Davis for 30 years and that didn't stress you out? And it did at times. But cooking stresses you out and it does. I don't cook.
Okay, so let's go into our final segment of this conversation. It is I'm bringing her to the table with me. And this is your opportunity to present another woman with virtual flowers, for that you would not be where you are in your life today without her fingerprint on your life.
It's got to be my mom. It's got to be my mom. And she's not alive for me today to give her those flowers. I do think I gave them to her throughout her life. I'm not where I am today without her attitude of don't let anyone, if someone tells you don't belong, show them you belong. If someone doesn't think you can do the job, just do the job. If someone tells you you can't do it because you're a woman, just go do it. Don't worry about what other people say. Do your job and work hard and pursue your dreams and your goals and pursue your dreams and goals with passion. Find what you love and do it with all the oomph you can. So it would have to be my mom.
Before we end our conversation, is there anything that we have not discussed that you would like to share with our listening community?
Well, I referenced this earlier, but I'll reference it again. If something scares you, understand that doing that which scares you can sometimes be a lot of fun. Look, I swore I'd never, ever, ever, ever go on TV. And now I'm on TV and I'm having a lot of fun. I swore I would never, ever, ever join social media. When I joined CBS Sports and someone in their PR department said to me, would you like to go on social media? I said, oh, I'm never doing that. I'm never doing social media. Now I kind of think it was invented for me. And then when I was told, what about a podcast? I'm never, ever, ever, ever doing a podcast. And now I'm doing a podcast with Susie Schuster and I'm having a blast. So I guess my message to people is if something scares you, if it frightens you, take a hard look and think, you know what, I might have a lot of fun conquering that fear. And remember to ask people for help when you need it. Look, when I started on TV, I was so scared. Bart Scott, former linebacker in the NFL, I know you know who he is. Bart Scott sat next to me on the set. Bart Scott held my hand, not figuratively. He literally held my hand under the table. And when we'd come out of commercial break, he'd grab my hand and put it back on the table. And then the minute we went to commercial break again, I would hold his hand. Those are the teammates you want. So don't be scared to tell your teammates when you're frightened, when you don't know what you're doing, when you need their help. In my experience, when you tell people, I need your help, they want to help you. I know when people tell me they need help, I want to help them. And it's okay to admit you don't know what you're doing.
Well, Amy, I surely appreciate this conversation that you and I had today. It was so lovely and it was a delight to speak with you. And thank you for taking time to come and stay a while and join me at the table.
As I said at the outset, it is truly, truly my honor. When I realized I had the opportunity to do this, I was giddy. I am honored. I am delighted. This was a real treat for me. And Tommy, or I guess, am I allowed to call you Tom too, or is it just Troy?
Yeah.
Um, no, I'll leave that to him, although I do love it. I do love the Tom. Tommy, you are always, 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 and forever invited to join me at our table for ice cream or otherwise.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I love ice cream, so I'm going to take you up on that one day.
All right, we got to meet up for that, and you are always invited to our table, and I will always have ice cream for you.
I hope you felt the love and connection in today's conversation. Every woman you heard from has faced the impossible and emerged stronger. This is your personal invitation to stay a while longer at TommyV.com. That's TOMMIV.com for more inspiration for your mind, body, and soul. And let's not forget your belly. You're always welcome at my table. Please be sure to subscribe, make yourself at home, and stay a while.